Hello, friends. Welcome to Liturgical Shenanigans, a Wayfolk Arts podcast. In this podcast, we invite you to join us as we explore the themes of liturgy, faith, the arts, and everything in between, with your hosts, Maddie, Hannah, Jackson, and myself, Phil. This is our third episode, and we're excited to share with you today a liturgy created, crafted by our very own Jackson. This is a liturgy created to be experienced in community, and we're excited to invite you into that community with us today. So, prepare yourself, grab a blanket if you can to wrap yourself up in, and join us as we engage in a liturgy for the darkening of days.
Hello, everyone. Today we have the joy of hearing from Jackson and having him share his particular liturgy with us. Jackson, before we engage your liturgy, is there anything you'd like us to know?
Yeah, this liturgy was kind of a fun project for me. I was in the middle of writing not writing a book. Wish I was writing a book. I was in the middle of reading a book called The Liturgy of Creation by Michael Lefebvre. And it was a really good book about how, especially into the creation story, there is a liturgy of life and seasonal calendars and kind of acknowledging of the agricultural roots of who the creation story was actually written for originally. And so it just really kind of pushed my imagination towards what does it look like to write a liturgy for a certain time and for a certain season. And so today we're going to be doing the liturgy that I wrote, A Liturgy for the Darkening of Days.
Nice. I'm really excited you all get to hear this. One more thing I'll add that you should know is this liturgy is written for a group. So each of us will be taking different voices. Jackson will be reading the stage directions, we'll call them.
Yeah.
I will be the host, which you'll hear about in Jackson's stage directions. And Maddie and Phil will be those congregated. They'll be the unison, all voices, and also the voices of the readers / enactors. So,
yeah, it's kind of an odd liturgy to do on the podcast. It's the first time we've tried something that has like different parts and unison lines and stage directions. So we'll see how it works. But I'm excited to try it.
yes.
Probably the last thing to know before we get going is, I don't know when you're listening to this, but daylight saving time might have been abandoned by the time that you're listening to this, if you're lining to it in a future year.
What do you mean abandoned?
It's like on its way out here in the US of A.
Yeah.
You had to vote on it
That's the whole
last
thing.
fall.
Sometime in the
But
What?
Yeah.
But it was going to make it through one more cycle or something?
I think
I think
so,
it
yeah.
Votes on that.
The government?
Government.
The government.
Which one?
I think it was passed through the
federal
federal,
government.
Yeah.
Like the
Congress
big
and Senate.
government?
big
The actual government?
Yes,
Yeah.
the
Not
actual
the state government.
Correct.
Oh boy.
We're going to
Anyway.
cut that out.
Well, that is an interesting thing, which we're not talking about today, but I'm talking about now. There's some states that opted out of it
Yeah.
and let the federal government can kind of say it happens.
So that's why I was at, is it Michigan decided, or is it the United States of
United
America?
States.
Wow.
Yeah. But either way, while this thing
There is still a darkening of days.
there is still a darkening of days.
It
As
will
the
no
seasons-
longer get darker in the
The
fall.
sun will always shine in the sunshine state of Michigan.
Yep.
Thus saith the Senate.
Thus saith the Senate. So either way, this liturgy is to kind of walk you into a season of a darker season, a season of less light, of likely some cold, and yeah, I'm excited to get to share it.
Also fun is, I mean, I know you said this is kind of an odd thing to do, but it's a shenanigan, so not really. It's our first time actually doing
Yeah.
a shenanigan-y or ritual-esque thing together, which is exactly what we aim to do anyways. So
Yes. So, as you prepare yourself to hear this liturgy, take a deep breath and hear this liturgy for the darkening of days.
A liturgy for the darkening of days. To be enacted on the evening of the first Saturday of November, the day before the end of daylight savings time. This liturgy assumes a winter season in which it grows colder and the light lessens. A word concerning preparation. This rite is best practiced within the context of a family or a small group of friends. The location should be the home of the host, leading the enactment. Prior to the enactment of the liturgy, a candle must be obtained to be given to each of the participants. It is also advised that the host make some meal or dessert to be eaten after the ritual. Bonus points for having it to be slowly cooking in a crock pot, so that the smells of food on the way permeate the ritual. The room must also be lit by 2 separate light sources to enable the enactors to turn off one source of light and then the other. The room should not be in complete darkness until the second light is extinguished. Each of the enactors must also bring a blanket of their own to be given to someone else during the ritual. The blankets, candles, and matches are set at each spot in a circle of seats to enable the enactors to easily access them.
Beloved Lord, we gather tonight in gratitude for your many gifts to us. Gifts of warmth and friendship. Gifts of harvest and sustenance. Gifts of light and gifts of darkness.
Remember to us now, Creator Lord, the stories of your goodness in our lives.
The host invites those gathered into a time of storytelling, in which the enactors each turn to their neighbor and tell each other a story from their summers or a story of joy in the past few months. And in the fullness of time, the host welcomes the enactors to wrap up their stories.
For each of these moments of joy and connection, we give thanks to you, Lord God.
May they recall us to warmth in the cold months ahead.
Lord, we are gathered here ahead of a new season of coming darkness. We know that you have made the moon to mark the seasons. You caused the sun to know its time for setting. You make darkness and wrap the world in night. We thank you that you have guided all creation into order. We thank you for the goodness in all the seasons of your creation.
Enactor 1 rises and switches off the first set of lights, putting the room into semi-darkness.
Lord, who forms light and makes darkness, we also name the pain of this season. As the winter months take us further from summer stories, the dark becomes a more present companion. With the dark comes cold, comes stress, comes sadness, comes loss. Hold our spiraling thoughts, our depression, our longing for brighter days, and show us the way through to the light of a new morning.
Enactor 2 rises and prepares to switch off the second set of lights.
Lord of light, we offer our worries, our sadness, our weariness, our fear of the dark to you. In this time of silence, we ask that you hear the prayers of our hearts.
Enactor 2 switches off the second set of lights, putting the room in darkness. Silence is kept. And in the fullness of time, the host lights their candle, then reads,
In our distress we have cried out, O Lord, and you have heard us. We thank you that no darkness is too great for you. Nothing we have held before you is surprising or new to you. Nothing we have named is greater than your love for us. Even if we fear this coming time of darkness, we know you are a God who makes their home in thick darkness. Darkness doesn't threaten you, and there is no darkness that separates us from you.
The host starts to hum a familiar tune, like Amazing Grace, In the Bleak Midwinter, or a beloved theme from a film, or any meditative tune the group knows. As the enactors join the humming, each candle is passed and used to light the match which lights the next candle, and on until all the candles are lit.
It is written in Isaiah 60 that God's bright glory has risen for you. The whole earth is wrapped in darkness, all people sunk in deep darkness. But God rises on you. His sunrise glory breaks over you. Nations will come to your light, kings to your sunburst brightness. Look up, look around, watch as they gather, watch as they approach you. Your sons coming from great distances, your daughters carried by their nannies. When you see them coming, you'll smile, big smiles. Your heart will swell and, yes, burst. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Lord, this season is one of darkness, but we do not enter it alone. We thank you for the gift of friends. We thank you for those who will journey beside us these cold months, whose company, conversation, and love will wrap around us, warm our hearts, and keep us looking for the light.
The host takes the blanket they brought, drapes it over the shoulders of another enactor, and speaks the following phrase.
From my heart to yours.
The enactor who was given a blanket then takes the blanket they brought, drapes it over the shoulders of another enactor, and speaks the above phrase. This process is repeated until all enactors have been given a blanket.
May our hearts be filled throughout this season,
that we may live in love with each other and with your creation.
May these gifts of light and of warmth help to keep us steady in the coming months.
That we may hold each other up when we stumble.
May these blankets from one friend's home to another remind us of the community we have in each other.
That we may reach out to each other when the darkness seeks to overcome.
And may these candles remind us that our Lord is present with us in darkness and in light.
That we may know we are never alone. Amen.
With that, the host invites all to eat the prepared food and drink. The lights are turned back on, and the gathered group shares time in community until the wee hours of the morning. They get an extra hour of sleep, after all.
I just love that so much. It almost makes me excited for the darkening of days, like thinking about doing this with a group of people.
I'm always excited for the dark.
Well, yeah, that was the kind of interesting thing that I wrote this in the fall as the darkening of days was coming, and I'm also of a mind to be excited when it gets darker, when nights extend. I'm often it's ridiculous.
He's very excited.
I'm often like, why are we like it's so nice to let darkness comes and you still have a whole night ahead of you, like hours of night to still do things. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm often find myself walking alongside people who like the darkness is a real weight. And seasonal depression comes with the coming of darkness often, and just the cold aloneness of winter. Or rather, the cold of winter often brings aloneness for people. It's not inherently alone in its wintry coldness, but it oftentimes comes along with it. So I was trying to write something that leaned into my every time it comes around to this sort of year, joy at at the darkening of days, while still acknowledging the real pain of it for some.
Well, and I used to think it was rarer to be excited about darkness, that we were a rare breed and the least accepted in the church. I don't actually think that's true anymore. I actually think it's a pretty good balance. There are people, and I guess I'll only speak for me. Part of the reason I value darkness is because it actually feels safest to me. Light is scary. Light things are exposed. I can't avoid the day as long when it's light out because the sun is shining and I better get up in the morning versus when it's still dark at 8 a.m. day hasn't really begun yet,
Yeah.
so I can just keep pretending like it's not about to happen. And then there are people who, yes, have seasonal depression or who really just want to get started with their day, and they're excited to be able to see everything around them and see the world well and be with people in the daylight and in the sunshine. So I think there's like a good balance of it. Just depends on your circumstance of life.
Makes me curious if there's been a study, I bet there has, if there's been a study done on the overlap of introversion, extroversion, and
Wouldn't you know?
Ooh, interesting.
Anyone
I
in this
don't
group
know
would
every study that's ever been done, but now I want to look at
Bill
every
does
study.
know most studies that have ever been done.
It would make sense to me. Although I know a lot of extrovert folks that would prefer to do their extroversion at night too. So like the party scenes, sure.
Ooh.
But especially the language you used in this one resonated with my introversion. The wrapping language, the wrap the world in night, where night is a comforting, secure, because night is my time typically.
Right.
If I'm with people, it's the people I chose to be with.
Yeah.
I don't tend to do things that, well, that's not true anymore. But I don't do as many things at night that are assigned to me. So I'm either with my safe people in my safe space, or it's like everyone else in my house goes to bed earlier than me, and finally I can like have my own moment. And that imagery of getting wrapped in a blanket and you can finally rest. Yeah, I think there's a rest image here for me too.
It recalled for me Hannah's liturgy that we engaged in the last podcast episode, but the final lines that say something like, "May as I put the cloak of grace from my own shoulders to another."
Yeah, it's something like that. I tend to use wrapped or like cloaked in something a lot in my prayers and liturgies, just because that is like it's this motion of comfort. Like if you have something wrapped around you, for me, the image that immediately evokes is safety, is something is there that's protecting me, comfort, warmth, all of the things that are happening in this liturgy. Really quickly though, I want to go back a beat to the darkness and light. And like, I'm one of the people who really loves winter, but one of the reasons I really love it is because when it snows, there's so much light in the world.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a really wintry place, but growing up in Iowa, there's so much wind. There's almost never clouds in the winter. There's clouds like when it snows, but like so often you have really sunny winter days, and like when you have a good snow on the ground, like the world is just so bright.
Yeah.
It's like the earth is reflecting the sunlight, so it's almost like a compensation for the fact that the days are so much shorter because the world is so much brighter. So like I really love the winter because the world is so bright, even if it's not there for as long. So like this is a really beautiful way for me to embrace the part of winter that I don't like, even though I love winter, because you have this sort of promise of community and togetherness around you.
Well, and you were just saying the other day, Hannah, that you said something like, "I become a different human when the sun is shining and when it's light out." Which I said that's not true.
Right.
The part of you that feels safest to play in the brightness comes out, and it's this like shiny, bubbly.
Yeah. I think I called it a fae being. Like I turn into the fairy version of myself.
Yes, which is lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. And she often comes out to play in the winter when it's sunny in Iowa, but it's not like that here in Michigan. So like it's often really cloudy in Michigan during the winter. So
In West Michigan, because
fair.
The lake effect stuff is real.
Yeah.
Right.
We get the lake effect up north too, but I haven't looked at the studies on this, but I do think we have more sunshine up there in the winter because I feel the permagray. I like the permagray. I am the opposite. They're not fae parts. My shadowfell parts
There you go.
come out in celebration in the dark times.
Yeah. And the thing, like the other part, like with that sort of like image of like moonlight on the bright snow in the middle of the night.
Oh.
That's my favorite image.
Oh, silvery snow. I'll take that.
Yeah. There's a great
Which also makes the night brighter.
exactly. Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
There's a great quote from a little I don't know the original person who wrote it, but it's one of the waystones in the Celtic Book of Daily Prayer book that I read. But it talks about the rider coming along in night may not be the bearer of bad news, and the night is dark and full of wonders. And it's kind of this idea that like kind of going against the we're recording this at least in the month of October, and a lot of the
greatest month there ever was.
The greatest month that ever was, and a lot of the narrative around night or
spooky.
Exactly, spooky or scary things, and well earned. There are sometimes things that come out of the night, but it's not always that case. I also was a little bit earlier. We were talking about the kind of warmth or the wrapping of night, and also and sleep happens often at night. We are born out of darkness, and the sort of safety of that sort of dark rest moment. So, trying to find ways to acknowledge the sparkle of snow that only happens in the middle of the night is a thing to try to capture.
I have a question, if I may, to the creator of the liturgy. Well, okay, so if I was doing this by myself, my temptation, and this is like when we run D&D modules and you're like, yeah, I like this part, I'm going to do this my way.
Right.
My temptation would be to throw out what you're saying about eating after and eat before. And I'm trying to decide why that is. I think it's because I want to linger in the darkness. Okay, do you remember when you'd watch movies in class and then the lights get turned back on?
The worst moment.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like I want to linger in the darkness, or like at the end of the candlelight service or whatever, and we stay silent.
You don't want to break the vibe.
It stays dark, So my curiosity was, what is your thought behind turn the lights back on and have dinner as opposed to whatever?
Yeah, no, I mean, I like your idea. I do like the idea of not kind of breaking up the glow of that moment. I think the piece that the reason I wrote it the way I wrote it was because food after is kind of the culmination of the gifts given. And that sort of like sensory, olfactory sound as well of we've done this thing, we've given each other blankets, we have a candle that we get to take with us, and now we're going to share a meal together and share stories together. The lights coming back on was really just a move towards hospitality. Because I would be happy with people stumbling through my kitchen in candlelight, but as I was thinking of like sending this out to folks, I imagine that could be potentially dangerous.
No, you're right.
But I really love the image that you're casting of like, what if we gathered together around a meal? What if we did this and slowly kind of just like got to taper down, maybe warm drinks or something like that is the olfactory sensory thing we do at the end. And get to sit in that semi-light.
I think it's a cuddle party.
Yeah.
I think we have our blankets and we cuddle.
I was just gonna say,
Depends on who you're
or
with.
the other thing, like Jackson just mentioned, like you could, if you're in a safe space to do so, if it is a hospitable practice, or like if you're not in an apartment where you're not allowed to burn candles, like in a dorm room. If you are in a space where you have the surfaces, you have the candles, why not just fill the place with candlelight so that it's still hospitable. You're not stumbling around in somebody's kitchen, or like you turn on the light over the stove, so it's not here we're blasting light everywhere, but there's still enough light to get your food.
Oh, that's magical.
But then you still have that sort of glow of the candles that doesn't get rid of the darkness, but sort of more coexists with the darkness.
Have a space like on the table designated for the candles to kind of spread out through the space.
Yeah.
I'm so into that. Big candlelight dinner together wrapped in our blankets.
Yeah. It'd be so cozy. Anyway.
I think too, it's a good example of just know your people before
Yes.
you engage. I mean, before you engage anything, know the room, know the people that you're going to be engaging it with, And if yeah, like Hannah said, if you're in a safe space where it's possible and you know that the people who are likely going to attend to this would absolutely consent to eating in the dark. I was thinking about this, like, what, when I was a youth director, what would it look like to do with this with the youth? With my particular youth that I loved very much, if I had them eat in the dark, it would become a joke,
Yeah.
Oh, the lights are off, it's spooky. They would probably start throwing food at each other, which they did in the light anyways, sometimes. So it would break it by keeping the lights off. But with my family, or if like us doing it together, my indication would be we should totally keep the lights off and have a candlelight party. And
Absolutely.
I actually was thinking about memories I have growing up in Illinois when we would get legitimate tornado warnings and have to go to the basement, and the power would always go out.
Yeah.
And it would be green outside, and my mom would light candles throughout the basement and throughout the house. It was just normal to have candles to light for specifically that purpose. I loved it. I loved bringing my blanket downstairs and sometimes a whole mattress downstairs because we didn't know how long we'd be in the basement, and we'd be together huddled as a family. Scary moment. Tornadoes are super frightening. And who knows what's going to happen. And I got to hang with my family in the dark in the candlelight. It was like a special, unexpected camping moment.
Yeah. And again, that like scary amplifies the connection. The darkness around amplifies what the light does. And I'm glad that you made that comparison, because so growing up windstorms were our thing, and trees would fall down on the power lines and the electricity would go out for forever. So that sort of like what part of what this is trying to do is trying to give you a retinal image, a snapshot of your eyes. And a feeling in your senses, a feeling of warmth, a feeling of the blanket coming around you, a feeling of the candle being lit and holding it in your hand, so that on the nights when you're alone in the darkening of days, you have something tactile to remember. You have that click snapshot to recall to yourself of that time of connection, so that even when this particular group is not around you, when you need them, you can remember that moment when they were and hold on to what was before.
Well, and literally be wrapped up in it.
In what was given. Blanket. Yeah.
I really want to talk about the blankets because I love it, particularly as a person who does not like other people touching her ever. And it would be my worst nightmare if it was, and now you're going to give your partner a hug, or any other form of wrapping. But the wrapping of it's still vulnerable enough and intimate enough that it does feel like somebody is loving on me in this way. I am being wrapped by this person, but nobody's touching me. It's just a blanket, and it kind of recalls that sense of care. Like sometimes I'll fall asleep on the couch and I'll wake up and my husband will put a blanket on me, and that is such a lovely act of hospitality and love, and to get to do that with the people that you're with, I just think is a really beautiful image and just a really good practice.
Yeah.
So your intention though is they get to keep so you're bringing a blanket to basically say goodbye to it because it's going with the person you wrap it around.
Yes. Yeah, and I kind of intentionally, I forget the thing that I was intentional about. But there's a phrase in there around. I wanted it to be a blanket of their own, and kind of thinking of trying to broaden what that means, because not everyone has a blanket at their home that they want to part with, but you go and you buy one. But I really wanted that idea of like you brought this blanket from your sphere, and whether that was in your home or you bought it at the store or whatever, it's your blanket and you will give it away and it will belong to someone else. I even like the idea of like if this became when I was writing it. First of all, when I was writing it, I was in a class called Liturgical Shenanigans, which is the name of this podcast.
That's the name of the show.
Dr. Reenstra call out for giving us that class and giving us the spark of the idea that named this podcast at least. But in that class, the sort of use of like tactile things was really important, and kind of grounding us in the giving of a gift that potentially. I liked the idea when I wrote it of maybe this happens more than once in your life. What if it happens every year around this time, and you start to see the blankets again?
Oh, that's so fun.
And you start to see like they're given around to different people.
It's like a better version of White Elephant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
And yeah. So yeah, the blankets for me at least was that like, and even the kind of there's a line in there that I tried to massage a little bit and change into the kind of hokey line from My Heart to Yours that is said while you do it. I still like it. It's a little hokey, but it's like it is like saying this like this rather than necessarily from my home to yours, because we don't all have a blanket we want to part with at home. But this is from my heart to yours. I brought this for you, and you will take it with you and carry it with you.
Did you have thoughts about how, I mean, the liturgy leaves it wide open, how who gives whom a blanket happens? Is it random? Like just pick somebody and do it? Or is like the Christmas drawing where everybody draws a name and I'm getting a blanket for Hannah?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Right,
make sure
right.
Jackson gets the one that my cat has slept on for months.
Months, so that my allergies are with me throughout the
Yes.
season. Yeah. I didn't specify that.
No.
And I think partially that's because I've experienced like both the gift of knowing ahead of time who I'm going to give it to. So they're like just the kind of pressure for me, the social pressure of like, okay, who am I going to give this to? How do I, can I like, or like if I'm going out to buy it specifically, I might like buy something that is specific to that person that I
Right.
know that they like. But also this sort of free, organic look up to the next person, either the next person in the line or the person across the circle. And I decide I'm bringing this one to you. Is this sort of like fun, very alive sort of thing. So I think kind of knowing your audience or knowing your congregation who is gathering is an important part of deciding.
I get both of that. I feel the anxiety of like, okay, when do I take my turn, and like who's left, and what will that person think, and
Right. Yeah. You want to avoid the like the team captain sort of picking thing. If you're in a group that has some, leftover stuff about that, it might be nice to be a sort of more planned or just round the circle so no one feels like they were the last
or
one who got a blanket.
dice rolling,
Right.
Yeah.
lot
Some sort of
drawing kind of thing,
randomizer.
like,
yeah.
oh, I'm
Or if
giving
you're
mine
like
to-
one of those people that are like, I have to win this somehow, so I'm going to bring the $50 weighted blanket.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the favorite person in the group. I really like, though, just anytime there's a liturgical takeaway that I get to carry with me. And I sometimes when I've led shenanigans, I guess, we'll just call them that.
Yeah.
And I've had something for people to bring home. I'm always wondering if it actually matters to anybody. Like, is anybody keeping this, or is it just ending up in the trash? And I led a sensory-based Stations of the Cross for Lent and for my youth. And 2 years after the fact, when we because the first time we did it was pre-COVID. So 2 years later, when we were finally able to do it together again, one of my students said, I still have all of the same things from last year in my room in a bag. And I was like, oh my gosh, it actually does mean something to people to be able to use their senses to memory recall what happened. Also, I just keep picturing like the joy of getting to like wrap myself in the blanket at home later and go, oh, this is my liturgy for the darkening of days blanket, and just remembering being together and Jackson gave this to me and this is what it means, and that's just so special.
Yeah. And then if, like Jackson said, you get to do this year after year, especially if you're doing this with your family or people that you will see year after year, it's like, oh, this used to be Jackson's, and this used to be Maddie's, and now it's mine. And I get to think of multiple people when I put this blanket around my shoulders. So it's like, it's not just one member of that group that was gathered, but multiple members of that group that was gathered. Like it's a really beautiful vision for what happens with the longevity of doing this as a yearly ritual.
It's tying to
in a
like
group.
maybe it's not, but in my head, the Elisha mantle passing even. Like,
Sure.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
now carry the cloak of this many people's hearts and gifts, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
And blankets just are maybe this is just me. I feel like blankets just in general are extra special items. You know, I had a blankie growing up that was devastating when I finally lost it. Or I think of the many people that have either handmade or specifically purchased blankets for our kiddo that will be born in December, and how special that blanket will be when we like wrap her in it and bring her home, or wrap her in it to put her to sleep. Blankets just are so they're so significant. Anytime there's a white elephant event in our family and someone brings a blanket, my spouse and I fight so hard to be the recipients. Multiple of our blankets are white elephant gift exchange blankets because we love cozy blankets.
And we can't forget that in several versions of the story, Superman's mom makes his super suit, or at least the cape, from his spaceship blanket.
Lest we forget.
Yeah. We are about out of time for the episode.
Are you serious?
We've been going for a good while now, but before we end, I have one more question I would love for just Jackson to answer. Jackson, I'd love for you to take just a minute to share about your theology of darkness, particularly the line. I lost it because I switched to another page. We know you are a God who makes their home in thick darkness. Can you talk a little bit about particularly that idea of God dwelling in darkness?
Yeah. So again, it ties a little bit into that, like, kind of prevalent, the easy, or not easy, but the prevalent theme of darkness is this sort of scary thing, or and especially with with the prevalent use of scripture, light is often used as the way God expresses God's self. A light of the world, etc. A light under a bushel can't be hid, or I'm doing that, but an injustice. But it is often used that light is how we tend to view God. And appropriately so. Even this liturgy does end with the Isaiah passage moving us into light. However, God also makes darkness. God also cultivates darkness. God, Psalm 18 is the psalm that talks about God makes God's dwelling place within darkness, wrapped in darkness. And I think that's something that is too often lost, because it's not that in darkness God is not there, or even in the sort of classic dichotomy of like I'm just in a season of darkness or something like that. It's too easy to say, and thus I am separate from God, which is impossible. God is in all. God has made all, and you will never be separate from God. You may have a lowered awareness of God in a particular moment, and it may feel like you are far from God, but God is always there. And no matter the situation, no matter the spot you're in, that is true. And so that sort of scared feeling that begins to develop in darkness, for me at least, has been a slow unlearning of that. I was one of the kids who like had a rough time going down into their grandparents' basements, because there was just something around the corner. And just the imagination could trigger, and whatever was there was scarier enough that it threatened me. And the sort of slow unlearning of, well, what is that feeling that I am feeling in that moment? Is it fear? What am I afraid of? Something that isn't there. I wonder if it's awe. I wonder if it's something else. And there's lots of legitimate reasons. Not everyone's fear of the dark is compatible to mine. But I that sort of slow process of what if the thing I'm afraid of is I'm alone in this, and what if that's not true? What if I'm never, in fact, alone in this? So I think that's the thing that I tend to move towards often, is I don't believe in this sort of that there is a darkness that we need to avoid. I think that God is in all things, and that uncomfortability in darkness is actually more about what's going on in me than it is about an absence of God's presence in that darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jackson. I think if we end up taking a little bit more time afterward, we can explore that idea of God being in darkness a little bit more.
Yeah, so here's the deal. You all heard last week on the episode that we do kind of like we're trying to keep these podcasts to like 20 to like 40 minutes, somewhere in there.
We just get so excited.
It's so excited, and there's always more to talk about. And so we do have kind of the bonus features of this podcast, which is available to our Patreon subscribers over on patreon.com/Wayfolk Arts. Which is a little tricky. So it's Wayfolk Arts is the company that we all run, that we do Liturgies of the month with, and that we're building towards this sort of dual vocation of artist and minister with. And it's what Liturgical Shenanigans is born out of. So if you want to kind of keep hanging out with us, keep kind of vamping on this theme, because I imagine we have a little bit more to say on darkness and the darkening of days. Patreon.com/Wayfolk Arts is the way to do it.
And to be clear, you'll go on patreon.com and you're going to see all these tiers. The basic of basic tiers allows you to hear
access.
All of our outtakes. We want you to be able to engage with them, and the after conversation podcast in the dark.
Hey.
Oh, also, what about this liturgy?
Yeah, the liturgy is actually going to be in the show notes below. I'll also link to a PDF in the description. And you are welcome to use this. This is one of the liturgies that we just want to kind of give out to folks. If you are excited by it, if it sounds like a fun way to spend a night with your crew, you are welcome to it. So it's in the show description. You can find it there. It'll link you to a PDF.
And tell us if you do. Share with us. We want photos.
Mm-hmm.
How do they do that?
I
You
don't
can do
know.
that Instagram, Wayfolk Arts, or
Tag us at Wayfolk Arts in any photos that you share. If you're part of our Facebook group, Wayfolk Arts, please share comments with us.
That too.
yeah, sure.
Share.
It goes well, and if there's anything that doesn't go well, that too.
Definitely.
Great.
Amazing. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us as we got to know Jackson a little bit more through this liturgy that he created and shared with us. Are we reading it one more time today?
I think we'll run it one more time.
Yes. Okay. So if you would like to listen to it one more time, stay tuned. But if you need to head out for now, we'll see you next time.
A Liturgy for the Darkening of Days. To be enacted on the evening of the first Saturday of November, the day before the end of daylight savings time. This liturgy assumes a winter season in which it grows colder and the light lessens. A word concerning preparation. This rite is best practiced within the context of a family or a small group of friends. The location should be the home of the host, leading the enactment. Prior to the enactment of the liturgy, a candle must be obtained to be given to each of the participants. It is also advised that the host make some meal or dessert to be eaten after the ritual. Bonus points for having it to be slowly cooking in a crock pot so that the smells of food on the way permeate the ritual. The room must also be lit by 2 separate light sources to enable the enactors to turn off one source of light and then the other. The room should not be in complete darkness until the second light is extinguished. Each of the enactors must also bring a blanket of their own to be given to someone else during the ritual. The blankets, candles, and matches are set at each spot in a circle of seats to enable the enactors to easily access them.
Beloved Lord, we gather tonight in gratitude for your many gifts to us. Gifts of warmth and friendship. Gifts of harvest and sustenance. Gifts of light and gifts of darkness.
Remember to us now, Creator Lord, the stories of your goodness in our lives.
The host invites those gathered into a time of storytelling, in which the enactors each turn to their neighbor and tell each other a story from their summers or a story of joy in the past few months. And in the fullness of time, the host welcomes the enactors to wrap up their stories.
For each of these moments of joy and connection, we give thanks to you, Lord God.
May they recall us to warmth in the cold months ahead.
Lord, we are gathered here ahead of a new season of coming darkness. We know that you have made the moon to mark the seasons. You caused the sun to know its time for setting. You make darkness and wrap the world in night. We thank you that you have guided all creation into order. We thank you for the goodness in all the seasons of your creation.
Enactor 1 rises and switches off the first set of lights, putting the room into semi-darkness.
Lord, who forms light and makes darkness, we also name the pain of this season. As the winter months take us further from summer stories, the dark becomes a more present companion. With the dark comes cold, comes stress, comes sadness, comes loss. Hold our spiraling thoughts, our depression, our longing for brighter days, and show us the way through to the light of a new morning.
Enactor 2 rises and prepares to switch off the second set of lights.
Lord of light, we offer our worries, our sadness, our weariness, our fear of the dark to you. In this time of silence, we ask that you hear the prayers of our hearts.
Enactor 2 switches off the second set of lights, putting the room in darkness. Silence is kept. And in the fullness of time, the host lights their candle, then reads,
In our distress we have cried out, O Lord, and you have heard us. We thank you that no darkness is too great for you. Nothing we have held before you is surprising or new to you. Nothing we have named is greater than your love for us. Even if we fear this coming time of darkness, we know you are a God who makes their home in thick darkness. Darkness doesn't threaten you, and there is no darkness that separates us from you.
The host starts to hum a familiar tune, like Amazing Grace, In the Bleak Midwinter, or a beloved theme from a film, or any meditative tune the group knows. As the enactors join the humming, each candle is passed and used to light the match which lights the next candle, and on until all the candles are lit.
It is written in Isaiah 60 that God's bright glory has risen for you. The whole earth is wrapped in darkness, all people sunk in deep darkness. But God rises on you. His sunrise glory breaks over you. Nations will come to your light, kings to your sunburst brightness. Look up, look around, watch as they gather, watch as they approach you. Your sons coming from great distances, your daughters carried by their nannies. When you see them coming, you'll smile, big smiles. Your heart will swell and, yes, burst. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Lord, this season is one of darkness, but we do not enter it alone. We thank you for the gift of friends. We thank you for those who will journey beside us these cold months, whose company, conversation, and love will wrap around us, warm our hearts, and keep us looking for the light.
The host takes the blanket they brought, drapes it over the shoulders of another enactor, and speaks the following phrase.
From my heart to yours.
The enactor who was given a blanket then takes the blanket they brought, drapes it over the shoulders of another enactor, and speaks the above phrase. This process is repeated until all enactors have been given a blanket.
May our hearts be filled throughout this season.
That we may live in love with each other and with your creation.
May these gifts of light and of warmth help to keep us steady in the coming months.
That we may hold each other up when we stumble.
May these blankets from one friend's home to another remind us of the community we have in each other.
That we may reach out to each other when the darkness seeks to overcome.
And may these candles remind us that our Lord is present with us in darkness and in light.
That we may know we are never alone. Amen.
With that, the host invites all to eat the prepared food and drink. The lights are turned back on, and the gathered group shares time in community until the wee hours of the morning. They get an extra hour of sleep, after all.
We want to thank you for joining us and engaging in this liturgy with us today. And for those of you that are hungry for more conversation on liturgy, on darkness, on the theology of doing rituals together as a friend group, as a family, as a community, well, we didn't want to stop the conversation either. And so we've developed the ritual of each podcast continuing the recording. And for those of you that would enjoy engaging in that with us, we make that available to our Patreon sponsors. So you can head over to www.patreon.com/Wayfolk Arts and find out more about that. We also would love it if you engage with us on Instagram or Facebook and continue the conversation about liturgy. We post liturgies there just about every day and would love to see what these liturgies are bringing up in you, what liturgies have been meaningful in your life, and what the Spirit is doing in your story right now. We look forward to engaging with you down the way. So blessings to you, friends. And as the days grow shorter, may you know that the Creator of the universe is there with you, wrapping you up in love as darkness enfolds us like a warm blanket. Grace and peace. So since you're paused, I did not make the Bane reference. I desperately wanted to. That's what
You were forced.
You only adopted the dark.
Okay, but that's a thing that Jackson
dark.
quotes literally every winter.
Then he can talk about it.
Molded
Molded
by
by
it.
Yep. Every
It could
time.
be part of your theology.
You were merely. What is it? You were merely adopted the dark.
Adopted
Yeah.
the darkness.
Do you know what was running through my head that whole podcast? From Anastasia?